Hello, I'm Milan Shrevinsky, and you're watching TVP World Talks, where every word matters. US Attorney General has made what may, in retrospect, be considered a breakthrough decision by greenlighting the transfer of frozen Russian funds to Ukraine. Russian oligarch Konstantin Malofeev is not going to be happy about millions of dollars making their way to the war-torn country, and I can't say that we pity him, not at all. The good news is that this transfer of funds could be the first of many. The bad news is that it's taken the US a while to take the plunge, while the European Union is still struggling with legal intricacies it feels obliged to address before it can follow suit. Will the money of corrupt Russian officials and Kremlin-affiliated billionaires finally be used for something else than buying gaudy jewelry or garish yachts? Our guest today is Bogdan Nahailo, editor-in-chief at the Kyiv Post. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Hello, and thanks for having me on your show.
So what was your first impression when you heard about this decision of the US Attorney General? Was your first thought perhaps, okay, but what took you so long?
My first feeling was at last, and then a sigh of relief, because this indeed is a breakthrough. Look, it's taken a long time, but so many things in this war and this standing up to Russia have taken a long time. Let's just go back 2 years or 3 years. You know, even getting javelins to Ukraine was a problem at one stage. Then, you know, getting tanks, Leopard tanks or whatever. Now getting planes, now getting long-range missiles or artillery.
Well, it is happening. I mean, Russia has received something of a double whammy today. First, this announcement, so the Russian funds are no longer secure. And the second thing, the big news, Storm Shadow missiles for Ukraine.
Yes.
But it's taken more than a year.
It's taken more than a year, but this is the price that democracy pays for being a democracy. There are no instant quick fixes, because then that opens the door to accusations that there's, you know, sort of diktat and there's usurpation and there's theft or whatever it is. Look,
Russia is already doing that. Look, I mean, Mr. Peskov is already saying they've stolen the assets of this man. He's innocent and all
This
that.
has been a long time coming, and many of the Russian oligarchs and others, and those close to Putin, have already done their best to either hide their assets or to withdraw them somehow. A look at Chelsea's manager in Britain, Abramovich, for example, and the fate of his club. The point is, look, the Russians and the Putin regime know that this was coming and is coming. So it's not a surprise for them. I think they've used every trick in the book, including legal niceties, to prevent, delay, obstruct. But now it's happened. And remember that this is a breakthrough in the legal sense, not only in the US, but this is also a breakthrough for Europe, for Switzerland, the EU, and others, maybe Cyprus, for example, where there are a lot of Russian assets still parked, maybe not hiding anymore. So I would be very worried if I was in Moscow that finally this is happening. And it's not that they are being seized, these assets, but they're being, in the first case, now handed over to Ukraine as part of what will eventually be reparations for the huge damage that Russia has caused.
So we're moving from freezing to seizing, finally. But also, this begs the question, what was the main reason for waiting for such a long time? I mean, surely it wasn't about the proverbial poking of the bear, because we've been poking the bear for quite a while, and we can see now that the bear is clearly unable to field anything else but a T-34 tank rolling down the Red Square. I mean, I know it's a simplification, a bit. But then again, we see that Russia is not the country that it has been advertising itself as. It doesn't have the same capabilities, and it often just withdraws when it meets with resistance. So this cannot be their reasoning. So legal niceties, so I've mentioned that. Aren't we caught in this sort of loop that we're thinking, like, you know, we're really afraid that the dog is going to grab the cake, but we're not trying to put it out of the dog's reach somewhere. We're leaving it in the open. We're allowing Russian oligarchs to challenge these decisions in our legal system. Shouldn't we change our approach in this regard?
I think it's dangerous to talk like that. It makes sense on the surface, but here is the distinction between a dictatorship and a democracy. In democracies, there is the rule of law, and rules have to be obeyed, even when you're dealing with monsters. Right? Even when you were dealing with Hitler, for example, or now dealing with Putin. So, yes, everybody knows that this should be done. But the question of how to do it properly and how not to shoot oneself in the foot legally and otherwise, and to get, those countries that favor Russia or will be apologetic for them to say, you see, look at the West throwing its weight around and dangerous, they're unreliable partners, they'll do the same to our assets. So I think the appearance and due process was necessary, but we've got there now. So this, as I said, the floodgates are open, and there is no excuse anymore.
Oh, indeed. I was referring more, to the threat that these Russian oligarchs, once they have lost their money, they will be trying to prove that this was illegitimate. They will be trying to essentially launch a huge amount of legal proceedings across many jurisdictions. Shouldn't this perhaps be countered by introducing some sort of additional regulations or using existing ones, for example, to strike down claims which are made in bad faith? If an individual is known to have obtain these funds by cooperating with a regime which is engaged in an aggressive war against a sovereign nation, in this case Ukraine, shouldn't there be certain safeguards against these people subverting our legal system and using it to their advantage? Well, at the same time, they are not really playing by the book, are they? I mean, they see rules as something to be broken, or at least something very, very flexible.
I think lessons have been learned, and I'm sure that this will be taken into account and such procedures will be put in place. But there's another side to the coin. I don't think these oligarchs will be so preoccupied in trying to get their cash back. I think many of them realize that they've lost it. But they've also realized that their cause is lost, that they're backing the wrong side. And I hope that not only is there financial damage, which helps Ukraine and its allies in the struggle against Russian imperialism, but that finally those who have supported this war effort, and Malofeyev as an oligarch has been in the forefront of supporting this brutal aggression against a neighboring state, that the penny will have dropped and they will realize that they've backed the wrong team. And it's time to draw proper conclusions to, if you want, as rats, to leave a sinking ship.
Isn't it the case, though, that even right after the war started, many thought, it's not going to last. I mean, the business elites are going to rebel. They are going to see that Putin is dragging their country down, that the economy is going to be in shambles, and they will stage some sort of coup. They will withdraw their backing. Unfortunately, nothing of the sort has happened. So we can see that this system that Putin has built, it's not watertight, but unfortunately it does operate based on fear, based on intimidation, corruption. So do you believe that this could be perhaps the tipping point for people who are still hesitant, who thought that, okay, maybe we shouldn't be withdrawing our backing of Vladimir Putin because we're going to get our money back anyway. Perhaps it might be frozen for a moment, but other Western countries are not going to be able to do anything beyond that.
I think we have reached a tipping point, because it's not just as far as oligarchs and the confiscation of their assets, many of which, was simply stolen from the Russian population and from neighboring areas. Okay, it's not as if this money has been honestly earned in the past. And because it's a corrupt autocratic system where fear is also a big factor. I mean, blackmail, fear, many people sort of taking leaps out of windows all of a sudden or dying in mysterious circumstances. I think it's a much more intricate and highly integrated system than we've imagined. Yes, the oligarchs who have supported Putin seem to be freer agents on the surface. But in reality, I think as soon as they start speaking out, they have reason to be in fear of their lives or their relatives or their families. So it's quite complex, but I think we're getting there. Better late than never.
Well, certainly. I mean, the United States is one thing. We've already mentioned that the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, has said that while this represents, I'm quoting by the way, the United States' first transfer of forfeited Russian funds for the rebuilding of Ukraine, it will not be the last. So that's the good news. Now, the same article in the Financial Times that I had the opportunity to take a look at mentions the European Union. Now, apparently, there is work ongoing towards criminalizing sanctions evasion across the bloc. Ongoing work about criminalizing the evasion of sanctions. It's been more than 400 days of full-scale war against Ukraine, and the original war started back in 2014. Now, doesn't this seem a bit unsettling that we're still, here in the European Union, so far behind?
It is unsettling in one regard, but there are other positive things. I mean, the EU has finally, in the last months, really got its act together in standing behind Ukraine, financially, morally, weapons, etc., munitions, whatever it is. I mean, the mere fact that on Europe Day, von Leyen was in Kyiv sent a strong signal, and that the Ukrainian flag was raised on that day along with the member states. That is important, and we have to see this, in terms of the complexity of it all, and not just isolate particular moments. What you have emphasized is indeed very important. But as I've said before, I think we're getting there. And, the EU is a very bureaucratic institution. It's made up of very disparate, some desperate, some but largely disparate states. Look at Hungary's performance in it, etc. And therefore, it's not so easy just to take a united stance when you have people and even neighbors next door like Switzerland having hesitations. But as I've mentioned, the fact that the Americans have gone forward with this, set an example, set a precedent, I think opens these floodgates.
And discussions such as this one, they are not meant to slam the European Union or any other institution, but to give them a gentle nudge, so to say, to pry loose the system that might have become stuck at some point, so that the end result, allowing Ukraine to win the war and to rebuild itself, with the help of Russian money, will be achieved in the end. Bogdan Nachalwo was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And I'm Ina Shrewiński. You're watching TVP World. Please stay with us for more latest news and updates.